Okay, everyone. So last time we were able to understand what is the root element, and that's the HTML element that we have here. And most of the other elements should be considered as descendants or child elements of the HTML root element. So in this lesson, I just want to discuss here the HTML element attribute or element attributes in general. So all HTML elements can have an attribute, and attributes are mainly words that are used inside of the opening tags to control the tag's behavior. So you would see here that in the HTML root element, we have what we call the language attribute that has an assigned value. Equal sign here means that you're assigning a value to that specific attribute here, which is equivalent to en, which means English attribute, because we want to specify that we would want to use the English language specifically for this web document. And remember that attributes can provide additional information about an element. They are always specified in the starting tag, as we can see here in our example here. So we have the HTML starting element and the HTML closing element or ending element. Usually, this will be coming in value pairs, which means that you assign a value to an attribute using the equal sign. So as I've said, we have the attribute here, and its value pair is the en value that is enclosed in apostrophes here. So we are able to assign a value using the equal sign character. And here we can see that this is an example of an attribute name, and this is the example of a value of that attribute. Let me just copy paste here an example of what I would want you to be familiarized with when it comes to attributes. So we have the attribute name. In this example, we have the language attribute name, and then the equal sign character here is the assignment character. So this is how we will be able to assign a value to this attribute. So we have the attribute value, which is en. In this example, we have the language code en. So if you go and search on the internet what is a language code, that just simply means that this is an attribute inside of the HTML tag that helps to declare the language of the web page. This is meant to assist search engines and browsers so that we can tell the browser that we need to specify the English language as the content of that element. So we have the element here, the language attribute, and the language code that we have here as the attribute value. Just remember, you can also use other language codes, and some of the most common language codes that you might encounter will be en for English. Okay, we have es for Spanish. We also have fr for French, and so on. Another key thing that you can try to take note here will be the country attribute, or the language code having a country code together with it. So let's say we have here the first character, which is en, which will be defining the language of the HTML page, and the last two characters will be defining the country. So let's say we have here US. Okay, so just try to search in Google or your search engine the term HTML language code, and you will see the necessary language that you will need for your web document depending on the language that you will need for the content of your web document. And another key value that you can include here will be the ZXX language attribute value here, which just simply means that your document or the value for this language attribute will have no linguistic content, but it will still pass the validator because we included that here. Okay, so let's say your content has no specific language value, so you can include this as the value for your language attribute. This value is used if you are not sure what language that you need to use for your text, or the language is undetermined. So let's say, for example, you have a span element that contains certain text, and you're not sure on what type of language that element contains. So let's say we have a serial number here. So you can just specify here that the span language attribute contains a ZXX, which just simply means it's undetermined. There are a lot of other attributes that we will be encountering in the long run when we try to go and run our code here, or when we build our project. So for now, I hope you understood that all HTML elements has certain attributes that you can use so that we can add additional information and instructions to the computer on how that specific element should be running or rendered in our browser.